Welcome to another episode of Auto Spec Renewed. Today we are in Florida at Electrified Garage to meet with Chris and his team and discover what they offer as far as servicing EVs, modifying them and converting classic into EVs. So let's check them out. So hi Chris, thank you for having us at Electrified Garage.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Excellent. So you do three things here. You service car, you modify them,
right,
and you convert classic cars into EVs.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
A little bit of everything.
All right, so before we check them out, can you tell us more about the business, when you started, how you started, and a little bit about your background also?
Sure, absolutely. So the way Electrified Garage started was I was a BMW mechanic. I met Chad, who you may know from Rich's YouTube channel. So Chad was my boss once upon a time. And so I left BMW, I went to work for Tesla, I dragged Chad over. I was the guy that wouldn't sell Rich Rebuilds parts back in the day. And
so you didn't want to sell him the battery pack he needed, or you could not?
I couldn't. It wasn't that I didn't want to, it was I wasn't able to.
But it's funny how life turns out when
and thankfully he doesn't hold grudges, because we wouldn't be where we are. But so basically Chad took a loaner car home for the weekend, took Rich for a ride, and that kind of was the bug that bit him. And then he said, I want one, but I can't afford one. And so Rich, proceeded to build one out of two, broken cars. And that was kind of, how his stuff got kicked off. In the background, Chad and I are looking at all the aftermarket things we used to do at BMW and realized that Tesla's not very friendly when it comes to that stuff. So, I kept poking Chad and I'm like, hey, we can do this better. You just got to be comfortable about jumping over. So anyways, we built a little garage in the back of my dad's house. We all quit our full-time jobs and started doing this back in, I think it was like July of 2019.
Okay.
And since then we've moved here obviously to Ocala, and then we also have moved the shop that started in the back of my dad's house to a bigger facility just across the border of Massachusetts.
Okay, so why did you choose this location in Florida?
So this location is good because it's equidistant to Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville. And Gainesville, being a college town as well, is pretty close by also. But really, unless you're doing 95 to come into Florida, you have to drive past us in order to go to the rest of Florida.
Okay.
So it's a good central location. We're not next to a Tesla dealership, so it's kind of actually...
It helps, yeah.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive where you would think like Popeyes wants to be next to KFC.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's actually better for us to be away from them and help service the population that isn't within easy access for them.
Okay. All right, first of all, let's go through the conversion to EV aspect of the business.
Sure.
Off camera, you were telling me it's a minute part of the activity because there's so much demand for the service of Teslas. Speaking of which, do you do other EVs outside Teslas, or are you mainly focused on the brand?
Well, I would say Tesla's probably 90% of what we do, but we've had plenty of people with Nissan Leafs. We've done hybrids too, so Priuses, Chevy Volts, Bolts. We've had Volkswagen ID4s in, Mustang Mach-E's. It pretty much, if it's got a battery and a motor, we'll work on it. And we can show you some more of that later, even all the way down to kids' toys.
Yes.
So.
All right, tell us more about this Dodge truck.
So this is a 1947 Dodge pickup truck. Originally started off as a gasoline car. The owners of this run a cancer research fund up in Massachusetts. It's called conquercancer.org. And so they were looking for a way to not only have something cool for events to help gain interest and have people come by and check things out, but also they needed a way in order to have additional power on their farm. So this vehicle, while it's electric, also has a very modest vehicle-to-grid system too, or vehicle-to-load.
Nice.
So
let's go through the specs.
Yeah. So under the hood, we've got a three battery module box here. This has got 3 Tesla battery modules in it. It's got a X1 controller from SME. We've got a Hyper 9 motor underneath. We're using a Saginaw 3-speed, which was like from an old muscle car, as the transmission. We're just leaving it in 1 gear, and then we're using the motor controller to go forward and reverse.
Okay. So relatively basic, but it works.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't need to be super fancy. This doesn't need to go more than like parade speed, basically. It's just going to events. So as we move further back inside the cabin, it's pretty sparse, pretty barren. Nothing too crazy.
Was it ever upgraded as a gas car?
No. So it was the original motor from 1947. Everything on this was pretty much original. As you can see, it has that nice patina character to it.
Patina, yeah.
Yeah. Which is actually all the rage nowadays.
What's in the back?
So we're in the process. We're going to be mounting. This is their logo here.
All right. We'll have the details in the description.
Yeah. But so underneath here is another 4 battery modules. And there's also a 5,000 watt inverter.
That's a big beast.
Yeah. So on the farm where the animals live, if there's a need for additional heat, air conditioning, or say the well pump goes out, they'll be able to plug in this to offset that, because obviously in New England, we all know about the winter storms they have. So it's not unusual to lose power. And this is a way for them to supplement that and also have a cool vehicle for helping to raise funds and get people excited about what
And you still have plenty of room in the bed.
Yeah. I mean, we literally, it came to us this way, so we didn't, that's one of the big things we try to do, is not monopolize any more space than what was originally there. So even underneath, everything is pretty clean. There's not extra stuff hanging around. Don't have to worry about driving through puddles or anything like that.
So how do you charge it? What type of charging solution did you opt for?
So this has an Elcon charger on it.
Okay.
And it's just J1772. So the other things we did is we took the rear axles from a 98 Jeep Cherokee, so we needed a better gear ratio. A 47 didn't really have like gear ratios to choose from back then, so that's why we opted for a Jeep gear ratio instead.
Okay.
And then we had to add manual brakes because the brakes weren't really set up for the way things are now. And that's pretty much it.
So when do you think this will be back on the road?
We're shooting for this one to be done in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
It's kind of been here too long, honestly, anyways, but you know, something like this, there's no kit that's out there.
Yeah.
So you're not, it's hard to say, like, is it going to take 6 months? Is it going to take 2 years? You know, it's tough.
All right, let's jump to the next one.
Sure.
The Land Rover.
So everybody probably recognizes the Yeezys are all the rage right now. This is a 1962 Series 2 Land Rover that we're working on. Another similar setup. It's got a Hyper 9, the same controller. The difference with this one is it's got a bell housing adapter, so we're still using the clutch, the flywheel, the manual transmission. It still has 4-wheel drive. All of that stuff is still being retained, so you can still drive it around. You can go off-roading if you wanted to.
Yeah.
It'll be capable of going on the highway if you so wanted to, but I think these only topped out at like 65 miles an hour anyway.
If that.
Yeah, so it might be a little scary, but we put bigger wheels and tires so that it would be a little less intimidating.
Do you typically try to keep everything fully reversible?
Yeah, for the most part, like we'll try to either bolt into existing bolt holes or not cut anything additional if we don't have to, so that if, you know, these are classic cars. Yeah. Not everybody is necessarily going to appreciate it, and so the next owner may want to revert it back to the way it was originally. Or
a new technology might come up, like with better battery modules and so on.
That would be nice if they're, you know, eventually the battery packs can get smaller and monopolize less space. You know, you got to think about weight distribution too is a big thing as well. So this one has an electric power steering system installed in it, and we actually did, you can't see it, but front disc brakes as well.
Okay.
Just to make this a little bit more safer when you're driving at higher speeds.
So same setup, also Tesla Model S modules.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And do you build your own battery packs? Do you use aftermarket ones?
So we've been using amp revolt boxes, and then we've been just building everything else inside all the guts ourselves. Okay. So running all the wires for all the BMSs, the high voltage fuses, shutoffs, all that stuff we've been doing ourselves, bus bars, all those kind of things.
All right.
So.
And let's jump to something quite unusual.
So this is a Moke International. These were originally designed to take the guts from old Mini Coopers and give those Minis a new life because they used to rot out a lot. So in this case, we're taking the 60 volt system again, Tesla modules again. This will now be 72 volts, same SME controller that we used in the other builds. So right now we're having to completely rewire it to run that different controller. But these were only intended to go 25 miles an hour. This will probably go about 40, 45 now.
Okay.
So I think it's probably the biggest flex of a golf cart that I know of, outside of those ones that look like a Rolls Royce or whatever. So.
Yeah, it's very basic.
Yeah.
It works.
Yep.
So do you do other work when you do the conversion? Would you typically do wheels and paint and stuff like that, or you try to
so
focus?
Paint we try to stay away from, or bodywork stuff. But we will do wheels and tires, suspension. We have a friend that does wraps or ceramic coating, that kind of things.
Yeah.
So we'll handle some of the aesthetic stuff. We'll also do like audio systems or lighting.
All right.
Things of
Bit
that
of
nature.
everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
And as I said earlier, the conversion part of the business is how many cars do you do, for instance, per year?
Oh, okay. I would say probably no more than 3 to 5 a year.
Okay.
I mean, it really depends. Some of the projects are obviously, like that truck is very involved.
And everything is a one-off.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas some of the other stuff, we can go get a kit off the shelf from, like Felton or somebody like that. It makes life a lot easier. And we just plug and play, and it's really just a matter of pulling all the old stuff out and putting the new stuff in. But yeah, I would say 3 to 5 is on average.
All right.
So now that we're done looking at the conversion stuff, we're going to take a walk over and take a look at the service and repair side of the business. You'll notice that most of these are Tesla Model S's, mostly because that's the original car that Tesla was making besides the Roadster. They've got the most mileage on them, and they're now in their 3rd, 4th owner. People are trying to buy it for cheap and keep it on the road for cheap. Unfortunately, drive units are not cheap, and drive units tend to be the biggest failure point right now.
Okay.
Coolant goes in places it's not supposed to, which causes isolation faults. The car shuts off, and it's the same as changing a motor in a regular car. It's not cheap and it's not easy.
Yeah, so there's no such thing as a cheap Model S.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's such thing as a cheap one that's just not cheap to keep it afterwards. So either there's an issue with the battery or the drive unit typically, but we do the best we can to keep them on the road, keep them out of junkyards. That was a big mantra for Rich when he was getting started. How do we recycle these cars and keep them out of there? So both of these vehicles are in for drive unit rebuilds right now. So we take the whole drive unit apart. You can see a couple of the cases here on the ground. You can see what happens to the rotor when coolant gets inside. It gets all nice and rusty. In certain instances, the splines here will actually shear off from all the torque. So we'll go through, we'll replace all the bearings, all the seals, all the gaskets, make sure that it's not isolated internally, get all the coolant out of it. Excuse me, once it's put back together again, because we're using upgraded components, hopefully it won't happen again. And the longevity should be improved dramatically from the original setup.
Would there be an option to prevent those failure points from servicing?
Excellent point, and that's something we just started now marketing, is that let's do it before it becomes a mess, so it's easier for us to take it apart. We're not having to do as much troubleshooting as to why it failed, and just replace everything right off the rip, and then you're good to go.
Okay, and speaking about replacing, do you do upgrades? So fit, say, 90D drivetrain on a 75 or something like this?
Sure. Yeah, so we do a number of different things as far as that's concerned. If you want a larger capacity pack, we can swap your pack out for a different pack. If you want to go from a base to a performance, we've done things like that too. So we've taken like a 75D and swapped the motor to a 100 kilowatt battery, and then also put the performance drive unit in, rechange the configuration of the whole car, and now you get a P100D.
Nice.
So with how cheap those things are available through auctions now, it's actually somewhat viable versus, it's better to just sell that car and go buy another one.
Okay. Can you add upgrades also? What used to be options from the store? Can you upgrade, say, FSD or anything like this?
So we stay away from FSD just because for legal reasons we don't want Tesla coming after us.
Okay.
But it is, I think there was a thing that was, I think it was in Europe actually, where they said, yes, you could physically go into the system and unlock that if you wanted to. We try to stay away from that as much as possible. But, for instance, if the car didn't come with power folding mirrors back in the day, we could add those. If you wanted a second onboard charger to charge faster at home, we could do things like that. If you didn't have fog lights before, we could add the fog lights to it. Different configuration change things we could do pretty easily.
And not only for Model S, but any Tesla model?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And for other EVs as well, for that matter.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right. So what happened to those two Model S's then?
So this one was going down the highway, and apparently the coolant pumps shut off, and the drive unit overheated. And so the drive unit, basically, coolant was pouring out of this side of the drive unit for like a good 10 minutes. Like the entire reservoir up front was empty.
Okay.
So all of that went inside of here.
Is it a common failure?
We've never seen one that bad.
Okay.
That's the first time it's failed that bad. But yes, it is pretty typical that on either side you'll have leaks. It doesn't take much coolant to trip the system, similar to like if you were to drop a hairdryer in the bathtub, it trips immediately, and then that shuts the car down. And so at that point, it's not going to start back up. It's also not going to support the 12-volt battery. So then the rest of the car is going to eventually die pretty quickly too. So that's basically, for both of these, this one just didn't fail as catastrophically as the first one. But this car came from Colorado. So there's a fair amount of more, actually there's evidence of rodents up inside.
Yeah.
There's a good amount of corrosion on the leads here. These are safe to touch. They're not energized anymore. We shut the car down. And then we actually had to pressure wash this because it was so disgusting. There was so much rust and nastiness all over it.
What about Model 3s and Model Ys? Obviously, they are more modern cars, but do you also find common failure points?
So Model 3, it seems to be the onboard charger is also the DC-DC in that case. So we found issues where it's not providing enough voltage and the air conditioning system won't work right, or one of the phases will die. So instead of 48 volts, you can only charge at, or 48 amps, I'm sorry, you can only charge at 32, or as low as 16 in some cases. Those cars seem to be far more sensitive with wheel bearings and with on the rear knuckles. Actually, we could look at like here. So on a Model 3 or Y, they have a monoball bushing that sits up top here. When they changed to 3 and Y, they changed that bushing to an aluminum one, and now they fail pretty quickly. Like cars with 15,000 miles on them are having to play. So they tried to cut costs to make a cheaper car, and in the process made it a less reliable vehicle that needs more stuff. So, but I mean, Teslas as a whole, because of how heavy of a vehicle it is, they all tend to have suspension issues where the bushings wear out pretty quickly, or ball joints, especially on Model S, used to shear off completely. So I have some other stuff I can show you, some video of one we just had up north where it completely separated. So when the person steps on the brakes, the whole wheel shifts forward and backwards. Yeah, I'm sure you've probably seen that as well. So outside of that, I mean, there's really not major failures with 3 and Y yet. I don't think they've been out long enough to see like lots of high voltage battery failures. Drive units have been pretty bulletproof. I don't know how much serviceability, honestly, Model 3 and Y are going to have for batteries. If you've seen, like, I think Sandy Monroe did that video, that foam that's in there, there's no way we're going to take that apart. Whereas these batteries are not fun, but they're still somewhat serviceable. So
we'll see, and also for the repurposing of those batteries, if you wanted to use them for a conversion, there's no way you could use them. They're just too long.
Exactly.
An option would be for energy storage, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing for a lot of this stuff after it's lived its life in a car, is figuring out a better way to package it and use it as energy storage in your house.
Going back to the business, how did you train and find your mechanics and technicians?
So each location has at least 1 or 2 people that have worked for Tesla before. Travis, who's my head technician here, actually came from the internal combustion world of tuning, LSs, because everybody LS swaps everything, including us. But he's an amateur pro drone racer, and you'd be surprised how similar a drone is to a Tesla. It's just on a much bigger platform. So
and a bigger battery.
Yeah, a much bigger battery. So it's actually interesting to see how he approaches situations and problems differently than, say myself, who worked for Tesla and, was only taught the way Tesla wants you to do it. So I think he's a major reason why we're able to be innovative with how we do these repairs, because he's thinking outside the box in a way that, you wouldn't be taught to. So, but then we are also in the process of developing our own workforce development training. So if you're already a mechanic, you're looking to figure out how do you move into this segment of the industry, we're going to have a whole bunch of training that you'll be able to take. You'll get a certification through us. And we're also going to be looking at how do you get the next generation of students excited as well. And honestly, for some of our employees, inmate reform has been a big thing too. So, these guys have gone in, paid their dues and come back out again. Society as a whole is not very forgiving for what they did. And in a lot of cases, these are talented people that deserve a second chance. So we're also looking at that as a way to help with, society as a whole, but also giving people a job that is in demand and isn't easily found elsewhere.
And we have not mentioned it, but off camera, we've been working together with F-Tech to promote the training of a younger audience and students throughout the United States and soon enough outside the US also.
Right.
Because the industry globally needs EV technicians.
Exactly.
Even a body shop needs a technician to respray a hybrid car nowadays. So.
Or just to be able to safely disable it so that they can go in and fix it and then re-enable it afterwards and make sure that the battery's not dead, or they didn't leave something hooked up while they were welding and now everything's shorted out. Like, we see a fair amount of that kind of stuff for body shops that don't know what they're doing.
So guys, if you want to learn how to become an EV technician, well, actually, Chris, maybe you can tell us.
Yeah, so actually we just started Electrified Training. The website is live, it's electrifiedtraining.com. If you want to head over there, give us your name and email address. Within the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to have a bunch of different training modules you can take online. And also we're going to be working on in-person training too. That way you'll stay up to date and know right when we're making that stuff available. Price points are going to be pretty agreeable for most.
Nice.
Where we're just trying to get our name out there and get the word out so we can get more people to work in places like this.
So are you actually hiring?
Yes. So both locations are looking for more technicians. It's not easy to come by somebody. Typically speaking, the electrical side of repair in general is like the great equalizer. It's like what math or science is in regular school. Like, you only get those that are really good at it and then those that aren't so great at it. But yeah, both locations are always looking for more assistance. We have more work than we know what to do with, and it's hard to find qualified people. For whatever reason, we tend to get a lot of electrical engineers, and it's like an electrical engineer is not going to do this. That's not their place. So people don't really seem to understand, like, we don't need an engineering background. You need to just be good with your hands. We'll teach you the rest. You just need to be comfortable with the idea of, not licking the orange wires and making sure that the car is properly disabled before you work with it.
Going back to the business, you've mentioned you have 2 locations.
Yes.
Are you looking into starting other locations throughout the US?
Yeah, so right now we're in the exploratory stage of looking at Orlando and potentially opening like a flagship store there. That will also be the headquarters for training as well.
Okay, nice. So what would be the requirement for someone to join the team and maybe open a new location?
To join the team, we'd like somebody to have somewhere between 3 to 5 years of experience. You definitely need to be comfortable with a multimeter and how to read wiring diagrams, how to do that kind of stuff. We'll obviously teach you the ins and outs of Tesla and the other EVs. That's not a big deal. As far as opening a location goes, ideally you would have already worked for Tesla or one of the other OEMs. You've got, probably 10 or 15 years of experience. Hopefully you've run a business before as well. But with our training program, you'll also have to go through that as well, as like that way we know there's a level of proficiency that we can guarantee, and that way it's the same if you come into our shop or you come into, if Jerome wants to have his garage, we can have Jerome's garage powered by Electrified Garage, and that also helps you not alienate your existing customer clientele either, so that's kind of the game plan for right now.
All right. So what would be the main challenges for someone starting a business like yours in the EV specific as a garage?
Okay. Honestly, the biggest issues we've faced when we've tried to open locations is finding space, and then the building codes and stuff like that really haven't caught up to what we're doing.
Okay.
So in a lot of cases, they're holding us to the same standards as a regular garage, and we don't typically have large drums of oil hanging around. We don't have lots of other chemicals. We don't have drains in the floor that now we need to have like a separator before that stuff goes out into wherever it's going. So zoning is an issue. Finding appropriate space is hard. And then really it's just a matter of finding people that aren't scared to work on this and are up to the challenge and understand how that stuff works.
All right.
Cool.
That's a bit flashy, but I guess that's Florida for you.
Yeah, of course, right? You're going to be the peacock in Florida.
Tell us more about your Model 3.
So this started out as a 2018 long-range rear-wheel drive Model 3. We then swapped the battery for a dual-motor battery. We put the front drive unit in, reprogrammed the whole car, so this car is rooted now. And it's a performance Model 3 now. So it's got track mode and everything works on the screen.
Nice.
It still supercharges like a normal car does. It's got full self-driving. We put airlift, air ride on it recently. It's got larger wheels and tires, larger brakes from racingbrake.com. It's pretty much, there isn't anything else on this car that's stock at this point.
Okay.
All the rest of the suspensions from Mountain Pass Performance, so like literally the whole car has been modified.
And you modify Model Ys, Model X, Model S,
Yeah,
everything?
we'll do any car. It doesn't
All right.
matter what it is. But yeah, we do a lot of track prep for Model 3s. That's like the popular car to go to the track with. There's a Model S right behind you that had to get a bunch of other stuff done to it. And
do you offer the same thing for, say, Ford Mach-E's for it?
yeah, so actually we've done some of those exhausts from Borla on Mustang Mach-E's. So it's pretty funny. It actually does a pretty good job though.
All right.
So yeah, we've done performance modifications for a number of other EVs as well.
And obviously this one is slammed down to the ground.
Yes, yeah, everybody's like, how do you drive this way? Nobody really
right.
realizes, you know, that it can go up and down, and that's not how I drive normally.
So what setup did you use?
So it's airlift bags and airlift management with a flow tank in the back and
Okay.
two compressors.
All right.
So we're going to be upgrading this kit. This is just pressure right now. We're going to get one with the ride height sensor so it'll stay level. Right now I have to do the math. If a big person or a lot of stuff's in the car, it kind of sinks down. But yeah, it made a huge difference. Like you can ride low, it's comfortable, you know.
And that's your daily driver?
Yeah, I drive this every day. My family goes on road trips with me in it. My wife doesn't scream at me because it doesn't ride like a brick anymore. So it's a lot of fun. It's got over 115,000 miles on it at this point. So.
All right, Chris, there's one last thing you wanted to
Yes.
show us, a special side project. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody's seen on Facebook Marketplace, people are trying to offload Power Wheels because the battery's dead or they don't work. So a lot of times I'll go around and pick them up myself. Sometimes I have friends that are like, hey, this thing's broken. I know you fixed these. So we have a couple of Power Wheels here that we're going to be upgrading and then giving to some children that wouldn't be so fortunate to afford them themselves. So
All right.
one of them is going to get new batteries. The other one's actually going to get some performance upgrades. So we take like Milwaukee drill batteries or we bump up the voltage.
Nice. So the upgrades are not just for the dads, they're also for the kids.
No,
Fantastic.
exactly. Well, so these ones are cool. They actually have the remote controls.
Nice.
So if your kid's small and doesn't know how to do it, you can drive it for them.
So you don't even need a kid, you can just buy the Jeep.
It's a big
play
remote
with it.
control car, exactly.
Nice. All right, Chris, what's the future for Electrified Garage this year? Do you attend any events? What's the plan?
So I will be attending STX, which is part of WorldPack. It's a big training convention that's in April. I'll be teaching one of my Tesla classes there. Other than that, we're looking at doing some events up north. Rich is maybe talking about maybe doing an event for him as well. Have all of his cars on show for everybody to take a look at. And
What about SEMA?
you know, it's like on the one hand, SEMA's kind of far away, but on the other hand, SEMA's right around the corner. I'm not exactly sure what's going to make it to SEMA just yet, but we're planning on probably having one or two more cars there.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
we'll see you again
Definitely.
at SEMA. All right, Chris, thank you so much for having us today. Guys, check out Electrified Garage website. You'll have all the details in the description. If you like what you saw today, give us a like, subscribe, and we'll see you soon in the next one.